My name is Dan Fisher. I live at 10024 North Banner Road with an El Reno address. I had the privilege of serving this area in the legislature for a couple of terms, and so I understand the difficulty that you face in governance. It is not an easy task, and I get that. Some of you I know are on this council because you did not like the way the previous government operated, and I applaud you for stepping up and doing that, because it takes a great deal of personal sacrifice, and I know that. I understand that. One of the things that I used to say to my colleagues is just because government can doesn't mean that it necessarily should. And just because something is legal doesn't mean it's moral. What you've heard tonight, I don't need to go back over because you've heard it. You guys have put in the time. You're tired. Everybody here is tired. If your assumption is true that the annexation is inevitable, it's going to either happen from Oklahoma City, or it's going to happen from Yukon, or it's going to happen from El Reno, then I believe all of us are smart enough to know how to make a decision on our own. Now, I know that you're contending by your legal advice that you have the right to call this an emergency, even though none of us sense an emergency, but you have the right to call it that, and you can act outside the will of the people to literally go around the consent of the governed, which is what all of us as members of a republic trust in. Without that, we really don't have anything. If the consent of the governed means nothing, then where are we? You say, well, that's for state government and that's for, the big guys. I believe that the government that's closest to you is the most important government. So if a local government cannot respect the consent of the governed, how could we expect the county or the state or the national government to do the same? And what you've heard here tonight are different opinions, obviously. If we put this up for a vote, who knows how many people would vote to not be annexed at all? How many would say, it's inevitable, we've got to choose, and maybe it is the lesser of three evils, and they would choose. Who knows whether or not they wouldn't choose El Reno? But they would be choosing. They would be choosing El Reno, not being forced into El Reno. I don't have any problem with El Reno. You guys that know me when I was running for the legislature, man, I worked hard in El Reno, and I have as much appreciation and respect for the citizens of El Reno and this government as I would Yukon or even Oklahoma City, though I know little about them. But it's wrong, I believe, inherently wrong for any city council, I don't care who they are, to force landowners against their wills to be annexed into a city, at least without the opportunity. If I end up being in the minority and I lose, well, then that's the way it goes. But I got a vote. In fact, I've been saying to some people that what this really is annexation without representation. Now, there was a time early in our history where the big issue, and we fought Great Britain over it, was private property rights. The right not to have an overbearing government tell you what you're going to do, tell you that you're going to house soldiers, whether you want to or not, be able to go through your personal belongings without any kind of a warrant, and just do whatever the heck they want to do because they've got the power. And I know you don't agree with that, and I don't think that's what you're personally wanting to do. I respect all of you. I think you're probably all great people. But something happens in governance, and I saw it in the legislature. There kind of begins this groupthink, and a herd mentality begins to take its form, and the ball begins to roll down the hill, and gosh, I don't want to stand up and say no because I want to work with my colleagues. And I've seen people actually vote for something that they said in private they didn't support. Well, why would they do that? Go against their own convictions. Most of you have said, if you've spoken up tonight, if you were us, you'd feel the same way. Yet that's immaterial. Now, I think we all know what the emergency is. I think you're convinced that if you don't hurry and get this done, UConn's going to. And if UConn doesn't, Oklahoma City's going to do it. And so for you, that's the justification. Well, I get it. If I was on the city council here, I think one of you said it a while ago, your job is to look out for the welfare of El Reno. That's kind of what you ran on. That's kind of the oath that you took. I get that. A council member of UConn, they're going to be doing the same thing, and whether or not we like the way Oklahoma City does business, their council kind of took the same oath. But in the process of trying to look out for El Reno, you have a bigger responsibility. Something bigger than El Reno, something bigger than the 17,000 citizens that live within the city limits. You have a responsibility to respect unalienable rights. Rights that go beyond El Reno. Rights that go beyond a city council. Because I can tell you, if a council like this can run roughshod over landowners, and we've always taken that right to be kind of at the core of who we are, there's not anything else really that you couldn't do. I've already talked to legislators that I know, and I've said, look, I don't know the law, but it seems to me unfathomable that there could be a law that actually says city councils can do whatever the heck they want to do with annexation. That those who are being annexed have no rights. Now, they can come and speak at a hearing like this, and by the way, I want you to know, I respect you, Mayor. I've known you for a lot of years. I respect you guys. I think you're trying to do the very, very best, and I appreciate you hearing us, but part of the reason you're hearing us is I think you're required to, but our voices obviously don't matter. Because no one consulted me. I didn't know anything about this till I started getting letters. I was blissfully ignorant that I was about to be annexed, and it comes along in the holidays. What a great time for that. And then we have a meeting that I didn't know anything about. I probably should have. That's my fault. The 2nd of January at 8 a.m. The day after everybody has to, the day that everybody has to go back to work after a short holiday break. Most people couldn't be there. Now, whether or not that was intentional on your part, it was just the only time you could schedule the meeting. It's the appearance of the thing. I guarantee you we would not be here tonight. I'm not upset, really, but I'm upset at the process. Maybe it is inevitable that we become a part of El Reno. I might as well be a part of El Reno as UConn as far as I'm concerned. I've lived in UConn. I lived in Mustang. I've never lived in Oklahoma City, I don't think. So I don't necessarily have an angst. Some others say that they have other experiences. That's fine. So I'm not really up here down on El Reno. I'm down on the process. I am down on the fact that I have owned my property for over 20 years, and now without any power, I'm going to be annexed whether I like it or not. And you're going to vote yes in a moment on phase F, just like you have in all the other phases. What would you think if your state government was doing stuff like that? I've asked the legislators that I know, would you please look into this law? Now, I don't have a whole lot of power, obviously, but I know some of those guys. I said, would you look into this law? And if it really does give, as your attorney says, and she may be dead on, I don't know, I'm not an attorney. But if that law really does give city councils the authority to do this, that's wrong in every city and in every county across this state, and that needs to be fixed. Now, I realize that you don't have the power to do that. I know that. But that ought to be fixed, because this is not right. So let me close with this. Because you've heard all of us, and man, we've hammered on you guys, and I don't want you to think that I hate you, because I don't. But even if I was for this annexation and was out in the community talking it up, I would be against it for how it's being done. And that's why these folks are riled up. They're landowners. That is one of those, as I said, one of those core values that we've learned to fight for. And you kind of bristle up when somebody says, well, you're going to do this. Well, maybe I don't want to do that. Well, you're going to do it anyway. Why? Because I've got the long arm of the law, and I'm going to make you do it. Now, I realize we have to obey the laws and all that, so that's why I think this ought to be fixed. So, likely you're going to vote yes on F, just like you did A, B, C, D, E, and this is the last one. I just felt that as a landowner and as a former legislator, not to lecture you, but to just say, I think this whole process stinks. I think the process stinks. Annexation's probably inevitable. I get it. And I know you're trying to hurry to beat Yukon and Oklahoma City. I get that too. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you. I hope I haven't sounded irreverent or disrespectful, because I don't mean to be. You're doing your job, and I get that. But I just think this is wrong. I just think it's wrong. If I was in the legislature and this was happening there, I'd stand up and vote no. I'd vote no, and I'd say the law stinks, it needs to be fixed. Thank you for giving me this time. I appreciate you. Thank you.